What is up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to the NFL Pick 6 show, week number 3. We have more information, more injuries as well. We'll delve into that. As always, you got John Daigle, ETR, Established the Run, Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis, the world-famous worksheet. Rich, it's week 3. We were talking a little bit of pre-show, and we were having a conversation about New Orleans, and that's they are in one of our key 3 games, so I'm glad we cut it off because we're going to be talking about more. I want to have an organic conversation on air. The 2-0 New Orleans Saints, I better put some respect in that name. 12-game slate on DK, 13-game slate on FanDuel as far as the main slate. FanDuel, as always, they're continuing to include the Monday night game. Wait, no, I'm sorry.
There's 2 Sunday night games this week.
Yeah, and they overlap, which they did that before, and it seems like a strange policy. Yeah, I don't understand how that works as far as TV money. It seems like that's not ideal. Jacksonville and Buffalo, Washington and Cincy. We will not be talking about that. But yeah, the Sunday night game, Kansas City, Atlanta, could be a fun one. That's on the FanDuel slate. Rich, welcome to week 3. Anything to touch on as far as week 2? Any victory laps as far as week 2, or mostly a forward-thinking show?
No, I made a lot of dumb decisions last week. Especially as the week went on and progressed. Started to get really cute. I don't think anyone got quarterback points last week, actually. But yeah, my quarterback pool was an absolute nightmare last week.
I saw you put out that tweet talking about, and I don't know if it's small sample stuff or just the way people are defending differently these days. The Mark Jackson, what happened to the game I loved? Where are the 300-yard passers? Where is the offense?
5 300-yard passing games so far.
What is going on? Is that small sample
moderation of things? When I tweeted that, I got a million responses where everyone said they had the skeleton key. It's literally a lot of. It's a combination of a lot of things. Defenses now currently, are dictating things a lot of pre-snap. Also, I think just edge rushers deserve a lot of credit, man. Like absolute aliens right now. We're in an alien era of edge pass rushers, like absolute 6'8" humans that are 260 pounds that can run sideways. So that 4'6". Offensive line play isn't good. The schedule doesn't help. Both inverse, like both areas of it. Shorting the preseason, adding another game, increasing injuries has mattered. Quarterback play and the transition of quarterback play from college to the NFL and more athletes playing the position instead of passers is impacting things. So there's just a lot going on. I don't think it's just one thing. It's a combination of a lot of things that got us here. And we'll see if we can get out of it because we've got 15 more weeks to do this.
You said the week was not spectacular. You did do enough to win the in-show tournament, though.
I did.
So later on, somebody has to win. Somebody has to win the in-show tournament. Later on, you will be assigning us all a movie to watch. We'll be discussing.
But when you're like you have a lineup you love and you get something, you're like, oh, this is it. Like I said it. Like it just looked perfect. And then when you log on, like everyone is like playing something different, and you're like, I missed something completely. That's like kind of how it was for me Sunday. Yeah, so we'll pick up the pieces. We'll move on.
12-game slate, 13-game slate. I feel like there's going to be a lot of overlap this week because it's pretty clear before we kind of dig into it, but like what the good games are and what the bad games are, at least pre-flop. Daigle's going to help us out with that as well. John, welcome to the show. We excited about week 3.
Excited. Like Rich, a couple of big mistakes. Heading into lock, I'm not kidding. I did the donkey 15-minute thing before lineups were set, and I had the 3v3 Dean, the skeleton key. I had CeeDee Lamb. No. It was Schoonmaker, Rashid Shaheed, and Andre Yoshivas versus – no, I'm sorry. Let's do this again. It is Rashid Shaheed, Schoonmaker, and Malik Neighbors versus Brandon Cooks, Taysom Hill, and Andre Yoshivas. And my week went based on the latter 3, which obviously were not the same as Shaheed and Neighbors scorching the world, all because I was worried about ownership condensing. So not a good week for your boy, but still happy with week 1. And if anyone's familiar with the background behind me, not just the company name, it's because right now, as usual, there are a lot of moving pieces. I don't move them to my new place until the first weekend of October. Last weekend with y'all was the first time I recorded a show, and the Wi-Fi was laggy enough, at least on my end, that I discovered I can't do live shows at that Airbnb that I'm at for the next 2 weeks. So I called a good buddy and said, Silva, I need to use your room again. So here we are at the old office recording from Silva's house just to appease the people once again.
Shout out Silva, friend of the show. Hope all is well with Evan. All right, if you guys don't know, first time here, welcome. Three main games, the three fun games, the three games of the most moving parts, I suppose. Three best games from a fantasy perspective. We will dig into them from all different perspectives. We'll kind of run it back and give our favorite quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, all the goods in games that we've not yet discussed. The very first game we have, Daigle, you, of course, always make these selections. You did a fabulous job. Philadelphia taking on those Saints, the 2-0 New Orleans Saints. The Saints are home favorites, taking on a Philadelphia team that, what a disaster. What a disaster Monday night. I don't want to get into the showdown stuff, and I know you're not supposed to look at your showdown like currently winning until like the very, very last play. But if Saquon catches that ball, like your boy is like winning so much money. Your boy's winning so much. Just catch the, even if he doesn't score, he could have scored. That would have been great. That would have been great. Didn't have to. Just catch it and just end the game. But you know, what are we doing? Philadelphia. Also, go for it in fourth down, maybe. It's okay. You don't kick the field goal. Going to keep us back on the rails, John. But what a disaster loss for Philly. I'm sure the city took it well. Talk to me about Philadelphia at New Orleans. Daigle, start wherever you want to start.
The most fun part about this game, too, is that without A.J. Brown, it's pretty condensed on both sides of the ball. So it's really just about getting all the pieces, maybe the correct pieces that are going to have the highest ceilings here. But like a lot of teams, what we're seeing, it's not just the narrative of injuries and less preseason games. And you mentioned, you asked before the show, even Rich and I, if the Saints like are for real, if Derek Carr's for real. And the answer is yes, but also it's even more in focus because there's so much bad around the league right now. So the Saints are just heightened further, kind of like Bill Belichick's career. It's like, yeah, he was the best, but he's also surrounded by a bunch of donkeys. So let's all be careful there. But for the Eagles, like the Lions, like the Bucks, it's so funny how we're just kind of copying, pasting their defense from last year, despite making the adjustments throughout the offseason and free agency and the draft back over to this year, because the Eagles ain't stopping nobody. And that's kind of a problem right now, is that you've seen Kenyon Mitchell get burnt just consistently by Drake London in particular this past week. The Eagles allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers also now, whereas last year they were a pass funnel. This year, they also can't stop the run whatsoever. Even this past game on Monday Night Football, both Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier averaging over 5 yards per carry, both getting in the box score there. So it's honestly a pick your poison. But to me, though, it still comes back to the Saints offense with Derek Carr and the two wide receivers, which is where all of the target share is going to. Like Rashid Shaheed, you mentioned again in our conversation before the show, which is why I didn't want to get too involved because I didn't want to like blow my load here on all the information. But it's not just deep balls. That's how he's getting there on touchdowns. But they're finally using this dude the way he should have been used his entire career. Yes, the deep touchdowns are great, but even this past week, if you watched it, they're putting him on slants more to move the chains as a possession receiver. They're getting him involved behind the line of scrimmage. He has a 20% target share in week 1, 26% in week 2. Chris Olave, I know, didn't look great in week 1 with that 13% target share, but came back to life with a 40% last week. And week 1 also, he was targeted twice on the first drive. One was negated for a penalty. But it's those two guys. That's it. Because even the Foster Moreau, Juwan Johnson usage, even if it increases, it still probably doesn't get to a level that we want unless we're playing large field DFS, especially if Taysom Hill's out. Maybe then you want to tack on Foster Moreau. But it's just the fact that the Eagles ain't stopping no one. And more importantly, Derek Carr's passes are really going to two wide receivers. So it's pretty easy to condense your DFS stacks there. So, of course, I want to get back on it.
Yeah, big total, high and tight, 49.5 is what I'm currently seeing. Saints just like a 2.5, 3-point favorite. So an ideal spot in a condensed Saints, you know, where the target's going to go. That's what we like. It's not that, you know, I suppose, like I said, Cedric Wilson could run into a catch or two, but like you mentioned, Foster Moreau, we feel pretty good about Olave and Shaheed. You know, take your bow as well. Rich, you were talking about New Orleans before the season started. If you're going to build, you're going to start a New Orleans build. Is it with Kamara? Is it with Olave first? Your favorite amongst those two? I know John basically said pick your poison. If you were to pick, where would you start? And I assume you like the New Orleans guys just as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are just going to ride this Kamara train, especially with the matchup. You know, he's been so good. I mean, he looks a lot more explosive than he did, you know, at this point last year. I mean, he already has 7 runs of 10 or more yards. He didn't get a 7th run of 10 or more yards until week 8 of last season. He remember last year, he didn't even have a run of 20 or more yards last year at all.
Wow.
I've been trying to be careful with the Saints. I've been trying not to double count everything because I was really high on this whole offense coming into this offseason. The one guy that hasn't quite popped yet, like Daigle said, Olave, I still think the peripherals are all there for him. Remember the Saints, because they've dog walked 2 teams, they have 42 dropbacks through 2 games. That's it. The target share stuff does matter when you can kind of extrapolate it out. Because, if we get a game where there's pushback and Derek Carr does have to throw 30 times, obviously that means they didn't score 45 again. But that's how you get the targets and the raw counting numbers. I mean, Olave was on his way there last week, and then they didn't throw in the second half of the game. I think Derek Carr this season, I was trying to pull up the stat to look it up, like how many he has 14 dropbacks in the second half this season. Wow. In 2 games, 14 dropbacks. So like they just haven't got any pushback. We saw this a little bit with the Cowboys last year, but they kind of scored a bunch of defensive touchdowns too. But do you remember like the beginning of the year, like the Cowboys, like CeeDee Lamb didn't even have like a 20-point fantasy game until like week 6 because they just like kept like mopping all these teams before and they just like the game scripts were weird. It took us like a whole month for things to settle down. We're kind of there with the Saints a little bit, where they just like haven't gotten the pushback yet and played like a real full game. But them just going to Dallas and doing what they did was like all the confidence in the world, like moving forward at this team, especially against, going back home. They get the Eagles on a short week. Eagles just played on Monday. That's historically like kind of like a spot too, where like these teams don't travel well. It's a defense that hasn't stopped anyone. I don't really see a reason to get off the Saints here. And we have some pieces, at least on the Eagles side, that are going to be viable here.
And you could argue that at his salary, maybe Shaheed isn't even priced correctly at 5,300 on DraftKings. Like he probably should be a 6K receiver.
Yes.
Well, if he's going to get that 60, 70-yard touchdown every single week, yeah, for sure.
But even like Daigle said, because it's still kind of masked because like the raw targets that these guys have aren't real, like because they don't have any dropbacks. Like, I mean, he has target shares, Shaheed, of 27% and 21%. Like those are real solid foundation target share numbers. And it's just that they don't have any passing volume. But like with his type of big play, like he's basically how Jameson Williams is being treated a little bit. But like the Saints or the Lions threw 55 passes last week. And, it's kind of the inverse. But like he should be priced, definitely. I think he should be 6K actually.
We're going to get to the Lions. But yeah, was it 3 targets for Laporta last week? Is that what the number was? Which is, I don't know, maybe a little bit concerning, or I don't know if that's how the defense was playing. We'll talk about them. Spoiler, that's one of the future games that we're going to be diving into. But this game, I swear, is just trolling me with the 2 running backs I don't have in any of my best ball teams. I was told that Kamara was dust and Barkley, well, the tush push. You can't have Barkley because all his touchdowns will be taken from him, and the tush push worked, this last game. Good for them.
If Kendry Miller hadn't clearly been on his way either off the roster or to IR, I too would have missed out entirely on Kamara. But once those seas parted and just how Jamal Williams was in this offense last year, it was like, okay, clearly I need to start adding Kamara at the end. So that was just a very lucky situation to get on very late.
I, like you, had a lot of Miller. And then when the Miller thing happened, I'm like, oh, well, I just got to get some Taysom Hill now. Of course. That's the clear and obvious answer.
And obviously, it's only 2 weeks, and we'll see kind of, Kamara, if he can stay healthy and on the field. But it's like 2 years ago where Kamara's ADP was kind of like the skeleton key, like Josh Jacobs was 2 years ago, where he fit every build. The 0 RB drafters got to Kamara. The heavy drafters ended up with like Kamara as their RB2 that like got a good running back early, like Achane or someone. It's like he kind of fit every build because his ADP just kind of hung out all summer at a price point kind of where the tier of wide receivers flattened out. So, I mean, he just fit a lot of rosters. I think a lot of people with him probably have some really good builds.
All right, Rich. Philadelphia really condensed again in the absence of Brown. Barkley in the backfield. Hurts on the turf, can move. He can scoot. He can throw. He's probably going to be throwing to Devontae Smith. We saw, who was it? Covey was getting a bunch of short passes. We're probably not excited about that. That kind of stuck up on me out of nowhere. Like, this guy's running with
you showdown monsters. I'm sure someone played him, right? You ghouls.
I had him with my Barkley team. Yeah, he was a winner.
I believe
it's a different game that's being played over there.
I thought it was a RotoGrinders show that had mentioned that he was shown in the starting lineup in warmups because I was out.
That was me.
There you go. I knew someone at RotoGrinders mentioned it. I was at the Cubs game, and so like I left to walk over to Wrigleyville, and I thought my lineups were just locked, set, not worried about anyone else. And then all of a sudden, I see Covey sneak in at 13, 14% in small field, and I was like, "Where'd this come from?" And then 6 catches got everyone there.
I flipped my Paris Campbell to Covey based on the news. I think it was I guess it was TJ. Yeah, it was either TJ feeding the information to Squirrel or Chop or one of the two.
Yeah, Chop and Squirrel were on the show, but I did exactly this, and I just peeked my head in, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's running with the starters."
Shout out to TJ. All right, so yeah, Rich, this Philly offense is condensed. 2 condensed offenses in a high-scoring game, a good environment as well. This game is tasty for sure. And again, we got a big picture at 13 games, 12 games on DK. There's a lot of duds. So this game feels really strong. Of course, it can flame out, but talk to me about the Eagles, Rich. How much should we like Barkley? How much should we like Smith, who should get, I don't know, at least 10 targets?
Yeah, I mean, I like Jalen Hurts. I mean, you can always play Jalen Hurts as the kind of, the guy here. You can do him as a one-off if you don't. But I definitely like Hurts, though, because you're getting kind of both angles here. And we still kind of seen Kellen Moore and his input on this offense. I mean, the Eagles have now used motion and not pre-snap motion on 56% of his dropbacks. And when he's used motion, he's 5th among all quarterbacks in rating. He's got 66% completion rate, 8.3 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then without motion, 55.5 rating, only 5.9 yards per attempt. And then, if they can kind of keep him clean here, that's kind of his other thing, his bugaboo is, his pressure splits on and off. So I think he's interesting with the rushing. Devontae Smith is in an intriguing spot because we know he's going to get targets, right? You look at now, he's run 150 routes now since he and A.J. Brown have been teammates. And with A.J. Brown off the field, and he's had 26% of the team targets, 28% target per routes, 2.4 yards per route run. But the interesting thing that happened, though, and it ties into your boy Covey, is he lost slot snaps in week 1 to last week. So his free squares, right? So he did get there on the touchdown, but that's why his yardage was kind of the same. He lost out on those free squares. The Saints have been way better to start the year against outside receivers and slot receivers, and that tracks to last year as well. This is part of the CeeDee Lamb stuff when we get there. But because the Saints were number 1 last year against points allowed to wide receiver ones. And they kind of picked that up so far in the outside receiver game as well this year. So we do kind of wish we had A.J. Brown here to kind of allow Devontae Smith to moonlight in the slot, because the slot rate from 55% week 1 down to 32% because your boy Covey can't win outside. So when he comes to the game, they got to throw him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. So that is kind of a down note if you're willing to just like pay up for him. I think the targets will be there. If you're going to stack like a receiver with Hurts, it would be Devontae Smith, and then you run it back with your Saints guy. But it is a bummer that we're losing out by also gaining targets.
John, what do you got on Philly?
Rich made the point I wanted to make on Devonta Smith, but then I'll take it to Saquon Barkley, because even when we're talking about Barkley and Jalen Hurts, at least for right now in the league, at least in this meta of DFS, we're talking about spending up at 2 positions. So it's tough given the every touch options we have at running back for in the mid 6Ks, a little bit lower than that, and the low quarterbacks that have become the norm. Even Gardner Minshew last week, even though I think Kyler Murray was the winning quarterback in most small field, getting there with double stacks with MHJ and Trey McBride. But the fact is that, yes, you can spend down at quarterback. Andy Dalton will be the conversation later, and then spend up elsewhere. One for that conversation, at least for week 3, maybe the spend up options don't exist. We're worried about them. We have to wait on Justin Jefferson. We're worried about Tyreek Hill reaching the ceiling at salary from Skylar Thompson, and the CeeDee Lamb conversation we'll have. So I go to Saquon Barkley, that also got the same bump without A.J. Brown. 17.5% target share in week 2. Not only that, but 1, we haven't seen the Saints run defense at all, for better or worse, because not only have they blown out teams, they played the Cowboys and Panthers backfields. Who cares? Like, what if they have a leaky run defense? What if the Eagles hang around? Then maybe soloing Saquon Barkley across from this cheap Saints stack with Shaheed, Alabi, and Carr is a big way to go, especially if we're going to continue getting 25 plus touches. So I think Barkley is a great tournament play here to spend up for.
All right. Great game environment. Anything else here, boys, before we move on to talk about game number 2? All right. Moving on, game number 2 in just a second. Do want to mention, if you played Survivor NFL the first 2 weeks, pretty good chance you might be part of the over 60% of people who have been eliminated. Do not fret. You can start up a brand new Survivor contest starting week 3 on Splash. Splash is available in 34 states, the leading peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contest. Join us, splashsports.com/RotoGrinders to compete against our RotoGrinders experts community and another fantasy Survivor Revival tournament week 3. We also added a NFL DFS pick'em or a fantasy tiers contest. Check all that out. It's at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Do you guys dabble in the Survivor streets? I have I had 3 teams and I got one still standing. It's been rough in the Survivor streets, and I guess that's about right math wise to have one for 3.
I love the idea, but dude, during football season, I got to protect these boundaries, and like I only have so much bandwidth. I know it sounds simple to just show up and pick a team, but even that added bandwidth, I'll crap out. Like my machine will just go dead.
I'm in the optimal one where you pick a loser. We've talked about it. You have to pick the loser, not the winner, because you only get to use them one time. And that's the way more optimal way to do it, because people just pick against a certain team every week, especially once we get weeks into the season, like the Panthers. We're on their way to track towards this.
Yeah, it's not. Well, Andy Dalton's going to come and save the season. And, Carolina, they're like, hey, 4-13 is so much better than 0-17. It really makes a huge difference for our future. Okay, game number 2 is Baltimore. Speaking of teams that are over, Baltimore, panic mode, must win mode. Some people are saying, I'm sure first take is they're 0-2 so far to start the season, taking on Dallas. Dallas coming off an absolute shellacking by the aforementioned Saints. 48.5 is the total. Dallas, I'm seeing they're a slight dog here, +1, depending on where you're shopping. I feel like that line moved. I feel like that was different earlier in the week, and it might have adjusted a little bit. But, yeah, Rich, what do you have as far as Baltimore and Dallas? By the way, Lamb, people are probably going to want to know this game, this podcast. You guys are aware. Most of y'all, Wednesday night we're recording this. Do join us on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe, join the conversation. What's up, chat? Well, we always appreciate you guys joining us. But, yeah, injury flow does matter. But it seems like the Lamb thing, he's going to be fine. That's what I'm seeing. He's sitting out, and don't panic. He's going to play. That's kind of where I'm at, unless otherwise noted. Rich, Dallas, Baltimore, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll start the Lamb thing just because I kind of teased it a little bit. So, I mean, CeeDee Lamb has started this season against the number 1 and number 2 defenses against opposing wide receiver ones from a year ago. Both of those teams have been good in the game. Also, they did not play CeeDee Lamb. So there is a good signal. I mean, Daigle kind of brought it up. It's weird because a lot of this stuff, like year over year, you just throw it aside every year. I've been doing this for 10 years, writing up every game. And the early season stuff, you typically are like, well, that happened last year. It's worthless. And there's so many of these defenses that are the damn same that are, like a year ago. It's crazy, even for better or worse. Like, I mean, you talk about like the Commanders, like it's just like the same stuff, man. It's a new regime, new scheme, and they just can't stop anyone. Daniel Jones goes for 18 fantasy points. But Lamb has faced the best defenses last year against number 1 wide receivers last year in points allowed. Now he gets a little bit of a reprieve. We've seen kind of the Ravens have been lit up by the 2 wide receiver ones they faced to open the season. Rashee Rice, 7 for 103 in week 1. Devontae Adams, 9 for 110 and a touchdown last week. This Ravens defense, when you open on Thursday night against Mahomes, we kind of don't bat an eye, right? We're kind of like, well, you had a bad game against Mahomes. What are you going to do? When you can't stop Gardner Minshew for 4 straight drives, now we start to take a little bit notice. They are now 28th in the NFL in pressure rate, 27th in blitz rate. When they have blitzed, they're 28th in the league in pressure rate on blitzes. And when they have not gotten pressure on the opposing passer, they've allowed an 83% completion rate, 8.5 yards per pass attempt. Those are both 30th in the NFL. I think it's a spot where CeeDee Lamb, we have one of these games where CeeDee Lamb kind of comes out and we get him back to like that 10 to 14 target range. And because he's kind of been so expensive and let people down, and because this week we don't have like last week, and we'll see what happens when we get to the end of the week, a lot of the free squares in terms of the pricing, like we had Cup last week and that didn't get there, but Mason and then Charbonnet ended up happening, and James Conner was dirt cheap on FanDuel. I think people will have a hard time getting to that dollar amount for a player that has let them down 2 weeks in a row. So I definitely am looking at CeeDee Lamb this week. Like, all right, this is the spot where we start to see some of the end of the season from 2023 CeeDee Lamb show up.
John, what do you have as far as Lamb and the Cowboys? Do you even want to acknowledge the running? They do have running backs. Do we want to talk about them? I don't think so. Not really.
Not really. I can't imagine a scenario. I genuinely can't imagine a scenario where you play any of them. Dude,
Yeah.
Deuce Vaughn, those weren't garbage time carries. He was involved in the first drive. At halftime, Zeke had 5 carries, Deuce had 4, Rico Dowdle had 4. That's an unplayable backfield. So it really does come down to if you want to spend up at quarterback at Dak, you know where to go, just like last week with CeeDee Lamb. And then for large field, the secondary option. Maybe we'll get Jake Ferguson back here. You then have to take on that volatility and how healthy is he. But we've at least seen the Ravens leak a little bit of production. Brock Bowers, who Rich even brought up last week, his box score, although it was already great, 9 catches for 98 yards, would have looked even better if he wasn't stuffed at the 1-yard line. And then pissing all of Zamir White managers off by instead putting Alexander Madison in at the goal line for a 1-yard score. Also, both Noah Gray and Travis Kelce combined for 6 catches, 70 receiving yards in week 1. So maybe some looseness there in their front 7 with coverage linebackers that we can look to for Ferguson. But beyond that, it's tough because I talked about Brandon Cooks last week, and he was on a little stretch of 13 games where he was the second receiver. So it could have been a blip on the radar. It could be going back. But one, it's a pretty costly mistake to make. It's not like trying to get away with a 4K receiver. Brandon Cooks is still quite expensive, so you just have to get it right because it doesn't allow leeway in the rest of your lineup. Not only that, but Jalen Tolbert is somewhat relevant because, yes, he wasn't targeted until a 2-minute warning, but even then, for Cooks to be shut out, for Tolbert then to still lead the team in targets, for a team that's looking for a second option consistently, like maybe that is it. Maybe it's Dak, CD, Jalen Tolbert. So I think they're all live options, and Ferguson's probably my favorite among them.
Yeah, I mean, Cooks is just where he's priced. I mean, he's right around guys like George Pickens and Jamison Williams, like, right above Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's both Shaheed. We talked about Shaheed's cheaper than him. It's Tank Dell's below him. Like just guys that we feel like one are playing better football and like are just where they are better football players. Brandon Cooks, going back to last year, the question you always ask when you look at Brandon Cooks, did he hit for fantasy, is did he score a touchdown in this game or not? Because that's really the story. I mean, he averaged the fewest yards of his career last year since his rookie season, and he's opened up this season with just 2 low yardage totals. He's had the touchdown in week 1, and that's just real. It's just real hard to pay almost $6K for a receiver like that.
I did it. It didn't feel good last week.
What about Baltimore, John?
It's the same thing pretty much that we're having a conversation with. Who is their secondary receiver? And because of how bad this offensive line is, we saw a major decrease in 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets against Max Crosby and that Ravens pass rush that was just all over Lamar the entire time. Their rate of 2 tight end sets dropped to just 29% of their offensive plays. Isaiah Likely's route participation dipped from 63% to less than 50%, so not even running a route on half their snaps because they have to get another blocking tight end like Charlie Kolar and extra offensive linemen involved here. Dallas's defense is still in a position where we're questioning who they are. They have elite pieces, but lost some major cornerstones in the offseason, including Dan Quinn. So it's always a question of who is this offense altogether? And so Lamar Jackson seems like someone who, obviously, if he reaches his ceiling, that's someone we should definitely pay up for and take into consideration because the Cowboys defense is probably somewhere between what Deshaun Watson was in week 1 and what Derek Carr and the Saints were in week 2. But at least with that style of quarterback, not the same kind, but similar, Deshaun Watson did have 39 yards rushing in week 1, did look mobile, which is the same thing that could perhaps happen for Lamar Jackson. So I think it's pretty clear at least that what this offense has become in jailbreak Lamar, always throwing off his back foot, deep shots into man coverage because they're just getting after him, that Zay Flowers is the one who's really stepped up his game here. 25% and 35% target shares. So to me, it's Lamar, Zay Flowers, and then the rest, I'm not really taking into consideration in small field. I don't know if Rich has a take for, the $9 slant or the $20 Millie Maker.
Rich?
Not really on the Ravens side. I mean, I think it's just Zay Flowers. I mean, too, we've seen, Mike Zimmer, he's running a lot more cover 3 this year. Zay Flowers has kind of been the cover 3 beater for them. And we saw, like Daigle said, that the usage changed. So week 1, it was they were trying to protect Lamar, get the ball out against the Chiefs. I mean, they couldn't block Chris Jones at all in that game. And 50% of Zay Flowers' targets were at or behind the line of scrimmage. We all watched the game. Every pat, we were like, what the hell is this? And then last week, he actually, ran routes and they threw the ball downfield. I mean, he doubled his air yards. His targets at the line of scrimmage were only 18%. His intermediate target share actually quadrupled. It was 10% in week 1. It was 46% in week 2. Because this is a player that can actually get open too. He doesn't have to run the Mickey Mouse stuff, and you got to feed him stuff at the line of scrimmage. So he's kind of the guy that you look at. I still don't have a problem with Andrews. Like, I mean, there's still nothing wrong. You're not getting the box scores we wanted, but again, I mean, 19% target rate. He was 6th in, like, the big plays were there for him last week. So like he was 6th in receiving yards for tight ends, 10.2 yards per target. I don't see anything really wrong with Andrews still. So I mean, if he's going to slip through, maybe he's an interesting way to get at this game that is kind of more clear at the top in terms of what we want to pluck away from these teams.
Lamar did miss him on what would have been like a 20-yard gain too, along the sideline.
In kind of his own price tiering, him and Likely, Andrews is 4.8, Likely is 4.7, Goddard's 4.6, but then Bowers is like $600 more, and Schultz is like $600 less.
And we would have killed for the days for a 4.8 Mark Andrews, man.
Yeah. Do you guys think that Lamar might run a little bit more of this game just because it feels like a game you must win? And you hear people talk about like sitting with Josh Allen, more Superman element when you're in the playoffs, that kind of thing, and they always want to win the games, but this one just feels kind of more important. And if he has to, maybe runs a little bit more. Just kind of
I mean, you look at Lamar, he's got a 25% scramble rate on pressures. So, I mean, listen, Clint Kubiak's on their side. Like we just talked about the Saints, like, and Micah Parsons talked about how they mitigated the pass rush, like through offensive line. Because the big thing I got touting the Saints all summer was like, everyone kept telling me their offensive line was terrible. And I was like, have you not watched Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins, for the last 2 years? Right. Like, one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL that's just been bludgeoned with injuries. And that's where Clint Kubiak has masked, because this is a team that still has, not great personnel up front, but they've been able to kind of create things. And Micah Parsons talked about that. So if the Cowboys get back to getting pressure like they pressured Deshaun Watson in week 1 against the Browns offensive line that is still missing their 2 offensive tackles, that could be a situation where we see more runs and scrambles from Lamar as well.
And you have to, as much respect as I have for Todd Monken, you do have to ask if the Ravens play calling is even creative enough to scheme guys open like the Saints was. Like Alvin Kamara looked great, but a lot of that, man, there's so much pre-snap motion, like one guy following Shaheed, and then of course it's just a direct snap instead to Kamara, or play action to him and shoveling it underneath behind the line of scrimmage, and he turns around and just runs wide open up the gut because the defenders are just being asked to follow other guys before the snap even happens. That's not really what happened. Like in the chat, for instance, they're asking about Derrick Henry, but like maybe Derrick Henry gets there, but the construct of this Ravens offense, like it's kind of the same shit that Henry dealt with in Tennessee, where he's being asked to do a lot before the line of scrimmage. Even last week against the Raiders, he averaged just 1 yard per carry before getting hit, before contact. That's not how Derrick Henry can break open. Like he has to have a little bit of room to work with here. So although like we saw Kamara again have a good day, Jerome Ford, 40 yards and a touchdown in week 1, just this style in the Ravens offensive line, I don't think it's a game where Henry can really break free and do something here to pay up for.
Another guy that's too expensive is I don't get the pricing on Derrick Henry. He doesn't have the usage that you would want to pay up for. He's still game script dependent. He's conceding passing downs, to Justice Hill. You have to the only way you can get there in a large field tournament with Derrick Henry, and he's done it before, but you need multiple touchdowns. And anytime you start as that like a starter with a player, I'm already kind of turned off.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at too. I mean, if you want to play the ownership game, he's going to be like 5% owned or something like that. But on paper, pre-flop, it doesn't look like a spectacular play.
It's like Rich said, like, I mean, it's not that Justice Hill's just being used in the passing game. He's just lapping Henry. Like Henry's usage has not expanded since Tennessee. It's 54 routes to 25. It's 10 targets to 3. Like Henry's just not out there getting those passing downs.
All right. Anything else here as far as this game, or shall we move on? I believe we're moving on. Okay. Before we do so, do want to mention, if you're looking for a plus EV contest this NFL season, our friends over at Action Network, they have one for you. The podcast called The Favorites. It's bringing back their free NFL Pick'em contest this season. Totally free to sign up at favorites.actionnetwork.com. Just 5 picks against the spread every week. Cash prizes with a top 10 finishers. $40K, 40,000 first place prize, $100,000 prize pool, thousands up for grabs. each and every week. Also, we have our RG RotoGrinders NFL Listener League. Do not forget to join in on the fun each week with RG's Listener League. Play alongside other viewers as well as your favorite hosts. You'll have a chance every week to compete for first place. Win yourself. It's not a free week. It's not 2 weeks. It's not 3 weeks. It's a month. It's a month of RotoGrinders Combo Premium. Check out the links in the description for an invite to the contest. I know spots are limited, so if you want to jump in there, make sure you reserve your spots. All right, Detroit and Arizona. This should be a fun one, boys. The biggest total on the board. We're on the, we're indoors. Arizona, we have Kyler. Kyler is back. Arizona's a lot of fun here, John. They're a 3-point dog at home, which I thought was a little strange. 3-point dog, especially with Detroit losing their last game. All right, and that's where we're at. But 51.5 is the total. Detroit in Arizona. Your thoughts? Feel free to start wherever you prefer, John. You want to start with Detroit, Arizona, or just the game in general?
I think this is the game I am most skeptical on when we talk about which one to lose a little bit of in our lineups. One, because it's going to get steamed heavily just for the total, the offenses. I get it. But so far, the Lions have had some layup spots. Like, it should have been better performances, should have been ceiling performances against the Rams defense and the Bucs defenses. Doesn't get much easier than that. And whereas Jared Goff got paid because he previously was an elite quarterback, probably still is, at least when everything went his way, it's been terrible so far to begin the year. 63% completion rate from a clean pocket, which is 27th in the league among all quarterbacks. He's not even making the easy plays right now. That probably is just knocking the rust off. I don't think Jared Goff has regressed to a below average quarterback, but it matters when we talk about spending up for these stacks in these games into condensed ownership. And so right now, although this Cardinals defense hasn't shown us anything just yet to be worried about, the Bills were amazing. We kind of called the demise and the collapse of the Rams in week 2. So maybe the Lions do get it going here. But at least the way the Lions and Jared Goff in particular are playing right now, I am a little bit skeptical based on what we believe their ownership is going to come in at.
Do you feel the same way, Rich, as far as the 3 big games we highlighted? The 3 biggest totals: Philadelphia Saints 49.5, Baltimore Dallas 48.5. There's a break to Houston, Minnesota 46. The Rams are 44.5, but then including the Detroit, Arizona. Amongst the 3 games we featured, which is the one that's most likely to be unsuccessful as a place to attack from a fantasy perspective?
I think there's a lot of ways this game could fail. I was curious to see how Daigle is going to start it off. And I mean, there's a scenario in this game where the Lions kind of get back and they just run the football over the Cardinals. Like there's definitely an avenue where that plays out. I'm worried about Kyler here. I'm worried about the Arizona offense here. I think there's a clear mismatch between the defensive line for the Detroit Lions and the Arizona offensive line that's still without Jonah Williams. Like everything that happened last week against the Rams is just not real. Like you just have to shelve it. You have the state of the Rams we have to put aside. It was great. It was beautiful. You take those points, you cash them in. Those dollars are all paid out. But this game in particular, because Aaron Glenn is an aggressive defensive head coach. They play a lot of man. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Kyler, for his career, has been one of the worst quarterbacks against man coverage. He has just enormous man coverage, zone coverage splits in his career. So if they're putting a lot of pressure on him, it could be a lot like week 1, where this passing game didn't look good in week 1. And it looks good against the Rams, who come in, just missing everybody. And it was the way the plays happened against the Rams too. The extending the plays, the broken plays, right?
Maserati.
You're not. I don't know if you're going to get those. I do think Kyler's going to have a good rushing game though, because if you go back to the Lions and under Aaron Glenn, because of the way they aggressively play defense, they give up a ton of rushing yards to quarterbacks. We saw this again with Baker Mayfield last week. And Kyler has a 22.7% career scrambled rate when pressured, 20% scrambled rate against man coverage. I think we're going to see a lot of Kyler Fred Flintstone feet this game. He's going to have rushing. I'm worried that the offense stays on schedule from a passing stance, though. I think it's a terrible matchup for Marvin Harrison to chase what you got from him last week. I mean, we've seen the Lions, since they've upgraded their boundary cornerbacks, they're getting killed in the slot. And part of the reason they're getting killed in the slot is because they have such a good defensive line and they put so much pressure on quarterbacks, the ball comes out hot. I poo-pooed Daigle's Dortch play last week. I kind of think Dortch is the guy I'm most interested in this game.
And you were right, because it turns out Dortch can't even get on the field whenever you're dunking on the other team by 30 points.
Yeah, if you're not in passing sets, like he's the wide receiver 3. He only plays in 11 personnel.
But such a little subtle thing. One of my favorite thing that Kyler does, and like most other quarterbacks or even runners don't do, he just always sticks the ball out. He sticks the ball out and gets that extra yard every single time when he's like going out of bounds. Why doesn't everybody do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with Rich. Like, we shouldn't look into anything the Cardinals did last week, but I do want to go ahead and put that Kyler touchdown to Elijah Higgins like on a highlight reel for the 2024 season, because as many tackles as he broke and still found a guy running sideways like in the end zone, that was an incredible play.
I'm kind of bummed you guys are poo-pooing this game, by the way. I was excited about it. I like this game.
I mean, I think there's a path that could get there, but I am worried just from like a matchup stance. When like I was excited when I started writing up things under the hood, because it wasn't just that Kupp and Godwin got the Lions from the slot. It was also other guys. It wasn't just those guys, because the ball comes out fast against Lions. If you watch Aiden Hutchinson this year, the dude's in the backfield when the ball is snapped. Yeah.
Like he had 4 sacks.
I mean, he's absolutely been a demon through 2 games. The Lions defense is absolutely gnarly. And that's what's interesting here, is because the Cardinals have had balance. Like, the one thing that they've been kind of successful so far is James Conner has picked up kind of right where he left off. And, he should have had the touchdown that McBride fell on, on the fumble. But they aren't running on the Lions. Buddy, you ain't running on the Lions. In the regular season, going back last year, they haven't even allowed 70 yards to a running back rushing. And you add they got DJ Reader on the field last week, and I know it was the Bucs, and the Bucs weren't going to run on them anyways. But you know what they did to the Bucs? What they should have. They gave up like 2 yards per carry. So that's what's interesting here. What can Drew Petzing, like the cat and mouse game, can Drew Petzing get that run game where he's been better at designing stuff than the pass game? Because the Lions, man, their defensive front is awesome.
And I know, like, in terms of our buy Leone model that established the run, Jahmyr Gibbs is popping. I think he's someone who's going to catch ownership here, but there's really no way to call it still. He just has 2 more touches than Montgomery on the season. Going back to last year after the team's bye, so a stretch of 12 games now, Montgomery has 8 more touches since they've played together. And what they've shown so far is that obviously Montgomery has not only been good, but he hasn't messed up at all. Like, he's still a very catalyst of that offense, because they still run the ball heavily, especially inside the 10-yard line. So, of course, Montgomery can snipe Gibbs at any moment. So I don't even like the ownership that Gibbs is getting for this matchup.
What about the other Detroit pieces? You mentioned, Amon-Ra, I mentioned earlier, as far as Laporta, 55 passes or so. He had 3 targets. Was that kind of an anomaly? Is the rise of JMO, is he eating away on Amon? Is he eating away on Laporta to some degree? Is that what's going on there? How do you see this, John, in that specifically against Arizona this week?
I think the JMO taking away from Laporta is real. And it's a couple deep shots, but it's also just how they said they were going to use him throughout the year, because now he's had a 20% target share in both games, and he was supposed to be injured this last one too. So the fact he's doing that, he's getting jet sweeps similar to Rashid Shaheed, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, all these guys that are just a different type of receiver going into their own role in 2024 football. And so, yes, I do believe like that's a problem right now in getting Sam Laporta involved. Laporta always has multi-touchdown upside, but again, given how slow or defensive minded I really think this game could become, I'm also still just worried about Laporta and the volume that could be out there for Jameson to instead take away.
And Laporta is a victim of circumstance, because the expectations from being the tight end 1 were just thrust upon him. But yeah. I mean, you go back to last year, he was very George Kittle-ish, or even before this breakout of Jameson Williams. He was the lowest scoring tight end 1 of one of like the last 20 years. But you go back to look at Laporta's box scores in the regular season. He had 60 or more receiving yards 4 times, 4 games. That's it. So like the expectations, I think, were just that we're placing on Laporta, where we thought he's going to be like vintage Kelsey, we're just too high to begin with. That was always like one of the big bugaboos of paying up for him in seasonal formats. But he was always very Kittle-ish already, in terms of having like spike weeks with touchdowns or having a big play. But like 60 yards 4 times last year. That's it.
You say Kittle-ish, and maybe this is kind of a tease to later on, but I don't that's historical Kittle-ish. I don't know if Kittle-ish is Kittle-ish this week. We'll see. I'm curious what you guys think. With the injuries going on in San Fran, feels like there's an opportunity for Kittle to step up. Yeah. Anything else that we want to focus on here, Rich, when it comes to Detroit and Arizona?
Well, I think just like we kind of allude to, Goff's got to play better. I mean, Goff's had 2 freebies. He hasn't played well in either game. On downfield throws 10 yards or further downfield, he's 9 of 26 to open it up. Well, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. He's also been terrible in the red zone. I mean, and this is where the Lions made their money last year. Right now, they only have a 27% red zone conversion rate, 28th in the NFL. They were 2nd in the NFL last year. It's kind of been Ben Johnson's bread and butter. That's where they've stalled out. The 2 areas, downfield and red zone, like the Goff just has to be better. And we'll see, if Arizona can get pressure. In week 1, they were the Arizona of last year. They didn't even breathe on Josh Allen. They were 25th in pressure rate in week 1. They play this gaggle of dudes that the Rams put out, these turnstiles, and they were 13th in pressure last week. We just need more clarity. It's early season, it's sample size. Sometimes you have a big game, and like sometimes something's opponent driven. We're just trying to get more kind of clarity on it and trying to see like what is real with the Arizona defense and what isn't. But I think the Lions, because of the way Goff has played, I think they're going to come out and want to run the football this game for sure. And I think they are going to be able to run it successfully.
I mean, you think Goff is just like bad now, or it's
no?
Just
I think Goff is Goff. Yeah. Like I think he's capable of doing this. I think he's capable of doing this. Is the thing.
This is one of his like 17 games in the dome this year, right? So I'm totally supposed to be good.
Which was always the garbage. It's always a garbage take.
Anything else here, John, as far as Arizona, Detroit?
No, we still have question marks too. If Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, what is his touchdown ceiling? Can it get higher since he's really still not used inside the 10-yard line? Again, Goff has been so bad. They've run the ball so much there to start the year that we still may not find out. But that's the good thing for DFS and taking on the leverage in this game is that if you play Goff, you also know where to go. Like the floor that everyone was freaking out about with Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was still a 21.5% target share in week 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown showed that he's just fine with 19 targets in week 2. So again, if you're paying up for it, you know what you're getting. We play DFS to win or lose. That's okay. But we still have to look at the ownership and see what we're skeptical about. And I think I'm just most skeptical about this one.
Yeah, he was the guy I got to last week. And I was like, oh, this lineup looks so great. And I got the Amon-Ra, and I was like, no one's playing him. This is amazing. And it's like, it still didn't matter.
You were a week too early on Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I've just missed Devontae.
All right, going to give our favorite players position by position in games we've not yet talked about. Before we do that, though, are you or someone you know dying to go to the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, play our free-to-play game every week for a chance to win 2 tickets and a trip to Vancouver? Check out pick6.actionnetwork.com. Again, that's pick6.actionnetwork.com to play, and stay tuned for a short video at the end of the show for more in the description. Is Daigle, are you a certified Swiftie? You want to
go? No. And I knew Action Network had that kind of, well, I knew they had money. I didn't know they had Swift money. So I was just surprised.
I mean, if nothing else, it's a road trip to Vancouver. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, Vancouver, great sushi there.
Well, okay. I guess that makes sense. It's kind of on the water, right? Geography.
Beautiful place.
A thing close to Seattle. All right. Rich, Taylor Swift? Yes? No? Indifferent?
Yeah, I'm neutral. I'm more of a Halsey person.
Oh, there you go. All right. Secret or, B, I suppose.
I have a teenage daughter. Well, her birthday is actually Saturday, so she'll be there. So.
Well, it'd be great if you win her tickets to Taylor Swift. There you go. Road trip to Vancouver. I'm sure you can sneak away in the middle of the NFL season. All right, let's go ahead and knock out our favorite quarterbacks in games we've not yet discussed. Rich, you won the coin toss backstage, so you're going to go first. I know you only have 4 or 5 quarterbacks on a given week, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm usually condensed.
I am too.
Baker was the only guy I got to last week that was good. That scored fantasy points for me.
Yeah.
I was riding that Anthony Richards, and how could you not? You just enamored, and then it finally, and I knew the red flags were there for Anthony Richardson, and I didn't care, and it finally was smacked me in the face. But I really out of the guys. What's that?
He's home this week. He's on the turf in a game that you'll play pretty fast. I don't know if you want to go back to it or not so much.
Yeah, I have respect for the Bears defense, though. I mean, even on Sunday night, we saw them calibrate and really kind of give CJ Stroud problems the second half. The Bears haven't allowed more than 20 points in a game since the middle of last year. I kind of respect their defense. So I don't think I'm going to be pushing that 30. He can get there though. Like he's the guy, especially if he's going to be low owned. Like he can get there because you only need the rushing production. The only other guy that I have that we really didn't talk about because I'm on Carr and I'm on Hurts heavily here in this spot. I do think I want to mix in some Lamar and Dak, but the only other guy I got is it's another spot to go back and combat this Jordan Mason chalk. One site, again, this is a trend. FanDuel wisely bumped up Jordan Mason to like where you really have to pay for him. He's like RB4, I think. FanDuel is like, we'll nudge him. Or DraftKings is like, we'll nudge him up, you know? But he's going to be super, super chalk again this week. And the peripherals were there for Brock Purdy last week. They were. He just didn't have the damn touchdowns. But Brian Flores was in his bag. But the 300 passing yards, we just didn't get this Rams defense. We just saw what Kyler did. I mean, the 49ers are going to steamroll the Rams. I think Purdy is still in another spot where we can go back to him and build some really fun, good stacks with Ayuk and Kittle. If you want to get to like Juwan Jennings or like throw the all-time Hail Mary on Jacob Cowing. But 49ers passing stacks are on the menu again. I got to go back to it.
Onslaught him. Play Mason, play all four. That's how you get unique around Mason.
You say onslaught. I'm curious because I wonder if you guys are going to have any takes on the cheap Ram receivers as runbacks. Oh, wow. That's just a double no. If you guys are just listening, they both shook their head instantly.
Speaking of copy paste, like these are the matchups you could set your watch to. And Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford every single time. 5 career games. Matthew Stafford.
Dude, if they couldn't block the Cardinals that we just talked about, if they couldn't block the Cardinals, what are they going to do to the 49ers against the 49ers?
That too, but Stafford also 5 career games against Shanahan, hasn't reached 17.5 points. He's crapped out there. So like all these guys, you're asking Stafford now not to elevate Puka, Cooper Kupp, or Marvin Harrison. He's trying to do it with our dynasty benches, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson. Like that ain't going to happen. It's game over.
Tutu Atwell is getting peppered in. Yeah.
Nobody touting Jordan.
The only guy, and he's too expensive, I think, to work in. The only guy I think that you can kind of get cute with would be Kyron just because of the touch volume. You can just say, hey, I'm going to take this amount of touches because they have to kind of run the offense through him.
Yeah.
But it's just this offensive line against this defense, like it's just really hard to trust. But yeah, you can play Ayuk. So fun stat, George Kittle has caught 15 touchdowns from Brock Purdy in his career. 10 of those have been with Deebo Samuel off the field. So we got that kind of going for us. And Kittle's always been one of these guys when one of the 49ers receivers is missing, it's like green light. Like you kind of always get excited. But I mean, Ayuk has enormous splits without Deebo. And then, like I said, Juwan Jennings is going to be on the field now. So even if you can't get, because those guys are expensive, like it's hard to build like the full onslaught around all these guys. So you're like, all right, well, I've got to take one of these guys that are, 4K. Then Juwan Jennings fits in too.
Jennings is 4-1. Yeah, Ayuk 6'2", Mason 6'2". Like you said, DK was not as reactionary. FanDuel has an extra game. And they still have Mason as the.
And this is consistent with last year. FanDuel was way more aggressive in altering pricing last year than DraftKings.
Yeah, they have been more proactive. You got to give them the props. I know historically it was the inverse, but that's the way it is. And that's kind of what I was alluding to by the way with Kittle. Obviously, before I feel like this is because sometimes when they're all the transformer spots are available, all the parts, all the appendages, like there will be games where Kittle gets like 2 catches for 6 yards, and it's like, what did I pay for here? Feels like a better spot with the opportunity of other players being out. All right, John, quarterbacks. We have is Dalton playable? Is anybody going to try to tout Dalton? Is he so cheap or just not necessary? I don't mean to float that one out there. I saw him in chat. Somebody mentioned Dalton in chat, so I felt obligated to mention.
I'll always talk about a $4,800 quarterback just because of what we can do around that. Like 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, that's how Minshew got there in Smallfield last week with 267 and 2. Like you get 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. You don't have to be the top scoring quarterback. It's about fitting in the Justin Jeffersons and Deebo Samuels of the world, because that's how you win your lineups. Again, maybe that's not the construction this week just because we have question marks about the players and receivers in particular you were spending up for in their ceilings and their particular matchups in week 3. But Andy Dalton, sure, if you want to spend down for it. One, though, His ownership's going to trickle into cash games because he's 4,800. That's going to happen. So you got to be careful there. And when you're playing Andy Dalton and Jordan Mason, trying to squeeze in Deontay Johnson as well, like there you go. You already have 90% ownership. Congratulations. What do you do from there? So you have to be cognizant of that. And not only that, but the Raiders are a team so far that they've shown you run on them. It's been pretty tough to pass on them, at least to this point. So how much of a ceiling does the Panthers passing attack have? I don't know, but the argument is 4,800. So that's where I don't mind it, depending on the rest of your lineup. I'm also interested in, though, because Reed's mentioned Purdy. He's definitely going to be top 2 or 3 for me, with Mason probably. But I'm still interested in Gardner Minshew in this matchup because maybe, although everyone can run on the Panthers, I get it. Maybe the Raiders are one of those teams, as they've shown so far, that just can't run at all. Like they are horrendous in trying to do so. But every team has done so, like because they typically build a lead. 1, with Andy Dalton, maybe the Raiders don't build a lead. 2, because they can't run the ball. They're still above average in neutral pass rate. Like they're still using Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers healthily. And 3, the Panthers defense, although you can run on them, guess what? You can also pass on them. They've allowed the 3rd highest rate of 15-yard gains through the air. So it doesn't have to happen on the ground between this Zamir White machination, especially if people are going to play Zamir White thinking that. It can still happen through the Raiders passing game. So maybe Gardner Minshew in large field. Either way, Adams and Bowers are once again very interesting.
Yeah, I was just going to ask which one you would pair him with. I suppose you can run a double out there as well. Bowers just getting all sorts of rave. People are just, they were comparing him to Gronk the other day. I can't remember who it was.
He was under-owned last week. He was under-owned too.
It's because everyone went down last week with Jordan Akins and Schoonmaker there. They just flocked to the cheap guys. Oh, and Brenton Strange once we lost Evan Ingram within the last hour of lock.
Who finishes higher for the season, assuming health is, no injury issues? Kelsey or Bowers?
Bowers.
Yeah, I think that's wild.
It's for me, it's between McBride and Bowers right now.
1-1.
Like I told, Daigle's in the house of Silva. This is the only 2-time MF Mackey winner. 2 times.
Yeah. He also texted me and said, "Bro, I was higher on Shaheed this offseason than you."
Get wrecked.
I actually don't think that's true, but whatever.
You got anything else as far as quarterbacks, Daigle, or shall you want to jump the running backs?
Just those options, honestly. I think we talked about our entire pools.
Running backs, what do you got?
Let's go. We already mentioned Jordan Mason, the obvious chalk. Let's go Tony Pollard. I think he's in a great spot against this Packers front 7. Since this entire showdown was copy and paste from 2023, the Packers defense just carried over without Joe Barry. It's the same shit. They still can't stop the run, including this past week where Jonathan Taylor got over 100 yards in 3 quarters because he didn't play a single snap in the 4th quarter for whatever ungodly reason. And here comes Tony
Pollard. The ball.
It cost them going to the playoffs last year. They did the same shit. He had 200 total yards last year in that Week 18 game, and they try to throw a pass to Mike Goodson at the end of the game, and it's dropped. I can't just keep going, Dave.
For as genius as Steichen is, there's some collective bonehead decisions happening in crunch plays in Indianapolis from time to time. So yeah, Tony Pollard, he not only gets the matchup boost, but Tajay Spears battling an ankle injury. And in the first 6 quarters they've played together, Pollard has out-touched him 30-17. Pollard has like a 70-30 timeshare over Spears right now, similar to Moss and Chase Brown. So I like Pollard a lot. He's not going to collect any ownership. I mentioned Barkley, and maybe that's it for me. I think we talked about the rest of the pool. No. I'm sorry. Two more. I forgot to both running backs in that Seattle-Miami game. You're going to get the touch boost for Achane, not only in how they're using him, 19% target share as well, but Skylar Thompson under center, although the receivers there lack a ceiling, in my opinion, because they still have to earn targets or earn accurate targets on their routes. Achane is just going to get dumped off to, since even in his 4 starts in 2022, Skylar Thompson led the league with a 23% backfield target rate. So whenever you're talking 25 touches for Achane, easily just play him, especially if everyone's going to be off him for maybe the lack of ceiling in that game. On the other side, Kenneth Walker also. I know the rub is that he's a bad running back.
He's not playing.
I'm sorry. Zach Charbonnet. I keep on saying
Zach
Walker.
Charbonnet, yeah.
I mean Zach Charbonnet, yeah. The resume right now, at least if you listen to the Gilcast, is that Zach Charbonnet is a very bad player. And that might be the case, but he's had a really tough draw in his 4 career starts so far, and that includes last week against that Patriots front 7. The Miami Dolphins front 7, at least, we have little data on the regular season. We did see James Cook break free for 3 touchdowns and get there. Zach Charbonnet in a positive game script's going to yet again get 100% of the backfield touches, and no one wants to play him just because he's drawn 4 above average matchups in terms of run defenses, EPA per play allowed. So I like Charbonnet at low ownership as well.
Yeah, I had Charbonnet on my list. I actually, the one thing about Charbonnet versus Kenneth Walker is I actually think, when I was thinking about this, like the way that Walker runs, because he freelances so much and he makes shit up on the fly and he's good at it. That actually helps him because the Seattle offensive line sucks. And it actually hurts a guy like Charbonnet, who's more of a power back. Like he wants to get downhill, and that actually hurts him because the Seattle offensive line doesn't block for him. He's averaging negative yards before contact on his runs, but home favorite, like it's a spot where you would just have him on your board. So I have him on my board, and Miami has not been good against the run either game so far this season. So I think he has to be on the board as kind of a guy that might go overlooked as well. I think Zamir White on FanDuel only, not DraftKings. He's too expensive, but FanDuel only, especially because they added the 100-yard bonus. I mean, it's the same stuff we saw last year. We saw this story with Zamir White a year ago. When the Raiders were winning the games and leading on the scoreboard, they ran the ball 61% of the time, and it was him. Like, we talked about why the reason we were fading him is because the Raiders beat all these bad quarterbacks. Now they would have been better if Bryce Young was starting here, so maybe we get more pushback with the fighting Daltons. But the Carolina run defense is so bad. I wish they had a move that was the equivalent of the Bryce Young move on defense. Like where they could just take it, because they don't. Like on offense, they can do it and say, all right, we're going to swap out, Bryce Young for Dalton, at least see where the baseline of our offense is. Because we spent $100 million on offensive guards. We still have a first round left tackle. We have one of the highest paid right tackles in the NFL. Like on paper, this offensive line should be solid. We went and get a receiver that can get wide open. He's got one of the best separation scores over the past, 4 years. It should work. So at least we're going to reset this. Dalton, we're at least going to see where the baseline is. But on defense, they got nothing. Especially with Derek Brown out. With Derek Brown out, they can't stop anything. So, I mean, yeah. So I think on FanDuel only, Zamir White, and I got one more gross one because I also had Pollard, and Daigle got the Pollard. DeAndre Swift is the other one. No one's going to play this dude.
Sure.
But if the Bears, maybe they're just another team that can't run like the Raiders, but we're going to find out this week. This will be the test. I mean, the Colts have allowed 350 rushing yards to running backs in 2 weeks. Guess what? DeForest Buckner was just put on IR. They have faced 51 running back rushes with DeForest Buckner off the field this year. They've allowed 5.1 yards per carry on those runs. They faced 25 runs with DeForest Buckner on the field running backs, 3.9 yards per carry. Maybe DeAndre Swift sucks. The Bears can't run. It's an issue. But if we're going to find out, this is the spot to find out.
So Zamir and Swift, like I dabbled with, and again, for tournaments, we know what we're getting into, whatever. The only thing I am concerned is that at least in week 2, we did get our rug pulled on both in the goal line with Khalil Herbert and Madison. So that would be my big concern there.
Yeah, I mean, Madison's stat line was amazing last week.
It was Stephen Davis all over again. 2 carries, negative yards, touchdown.
The blitz game level factors really likes the speed, as far as plays in the Chicago game as well. You mentioned the White thing as
there's going to be a lot of clock stoppages in that game. There's going to be a lot of incomplete passes.
That'll do it. You talk about the 100-yard bonus on FanDuel. Well, Antonio Pierce cares about the 100-yard bonus. He's talked about he thinks it's important to get his running back. Remember he talked about this last year? It was important to get his running back 100 yards. It's like, is that something that they talk about in the locker room and they care about? I don't know. But
let's see him get his running backs collectively over 40 yards first. Let's have a building block here.
Yeah. Is Madison like the sneaky play, or it's White's the sharp, the most likely play to get there? But I guess,
and that's the thing with Swift too. We'd seen Khalil Herbert got that. He played in the 2-minute drill and got that touchdown. Like, what if they mix him in more because just Swift's been so bad? I mean, that's the thing. Those are large field guys. Well, White, I think you can play as just like a floor based dude, but Swift is a large field play for sure.
Mm-hmm. And also, last thing, by the way, I know you guys mentioned Acham. Was it just me? It was what? 29 touches in a game, down 3 touchdowns. He's still out there with 4 or 5 minutes to go. You saw what happened to your quarterback. You're clearly not coming back. Like, it just – and this is the guy you babied all last year, had some injuries. Very strange. I'm a McDaniel.
It was weird, too, like everyone blaming Tua. Like, Tua was playing a really shitty game before he got hurt, right? And he's got on a 4th down play. Like, this dude is out here trying to, like, we've all been where we've played sports in some level where, like, you're frustrated, you aren't playing your best game, you're trying to make something happen. Tua's on a 4th down play, like, selling out, trying to get this first down to try to keep hope alive. And, like, everyone's just like, what an idiot. He should have slid. Like, he ran right into him. Like, he's out here trying to play, man. Like, he was getting his ass kicked the entire night. He's trying to, redeem himself and make a play. Like, it's not his fault, man.
And I know for a 2-game slate on Monday night, but Monday nights, everyone's going to try to sneak in these Jaguar stacks across for Bills. And so far, that Bills passing defense, man, against Kyler and Tua to just shut down everyone pretty much, it's look good.
Side note is Trevor Lawrence bad? Is he not good? Or is he not as good as we want him to be?
I have questions about everything in that organization. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, Shad Khan. I don't know whose fault it is, honestly, but that offense certified sucks right now going back to last year.
Another team, the offensive line's bad. Like,
all right. I'll be playing the 2-gamer, though. I'll be dabbling in the 2 games. I know we're kind of goofing on the weird time overlap, but yeah,
the Commanders' defense is involved, Dean.
Yeah, and the Bengals. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, pretty straightforward what you're supposed to do. We'll see how that plays out. Okay.
If T. Higgins plays too, man, it'll be interesting.
Is he likely to play?
I don't know. It's just like he's at that 3-week mark where it's like he could be on the field.
Yeah. Well, if he looks at the schedule, maybe he'll consider playing. It seems like a good spot to come back for sure. All right. John, you want to, speaking of Higgins, receivers, what do you got for me?
I got a couple still. I'll definitely mix into my pool among the others we've talked about. Nico Collins is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a buy low situation for Tank Dell. He's been 3rd on the team in target share so far, 17%, but he probably wouldn't even be this ridiculous salary on DraftKings if CJ Stroud would have delivered an accurate 50-yard pass on Sunday Night Football. Dell could have just ran away to the end zone instead. But he's also one of those guys like we talked about earlier with Shaheed, who's getting jet sweeps, 5 carries now through 2 games on top of delivering with a team high 14.5-yard ADOT, whereas Stephon Diggs is just getting peppered solely underneath with 0 ceiling unless he falls in for 2 touchdowns with the 5.5-yard depth of target. So I still like Dell, especially given Stroud's success going back to last year against the blitz. We know Flores is going to send the house. Like Rich said last week, actually, against Brock Purdy, Flores has been great at limiting the ceilings of opposing pass offenses, but I bet we can sneak one Texans wide receiver in there. And then let's see who else is on the list. The ugly one I have written down is no one. Don't shut off the show. No one's going to play Cortland Sutton, but and if you see Bo Nix, I understand you wouldn't play Cortland Sutton either, but we still got that 28.5% target share to hang our hat on in week 1. He's the only player on that team who's seen end zone targets. He has 4 of them already. And he's no longer playing the Seattle boundary corners, Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, and Joey Porter following him around in week 2. Like, this is the softest matchup to date. It's a pretty good one that Jared Goff didn't deliver in, but if there's someone to reach their ceiling in that one, I think Cortland Sutton can do it. And again, no one's going to play him. And yes, if people get to DeAndre Swift, again, great matchup, but kind of like the Panthers, you can do whatever you want. And so DJ Moore has shown us, especially with a condensed target tree without Keenan Allen, 18 targets the first 2 games, really was just missed on a couple timely routes.
I never seen a dude so bad. Like,
dude, he was so defeated. And so I don't know who was more defeated though, him or Brian Callahan after the Levis pick again, because Callahan also was pretty pissed off at the world that Levis did it back-to-back games.
And that's the play Spears got hurt on.
Yeah. But 18 targets for DJ Moore through 2 games, 10 targets last week in a condensed target tree. Yeah, and again, the Colts aren't going to get pressure. You can do whatever you want to them, as the Packers even showed us with Malik Willis. So if we see DeAndre Swift getting a little bit steamed heading into the weekend as a cheap running back, DJ Moore is a good pivot.
I ran 100 optimals on DK, adding some variants. I didn't put a lot of rules in there. I was not building, stacks. The most popular receivers to hit my DK lineups are Brandon Ayuk at 46%, Deontay Johnson for Carolina at 4.9, with Dalton coming in, right? It feels like 6 for 60 and maybe a touchdown or on layaway, something like that. Jawan Jennings, third most popular, and then Elijah Moore at 3.6. Like, gross. Amon-Ra, Jefferson, the first two big spends coming in for what it's worth. And then a dreaded Ram, Robinson comes in at 19%, and Dell at 13. Just to figure I'd throw that out there. Anybody there get you excited? Probably some guys that did not, Rich. But what do you have as far as receivers to add to the conversation?
I mean, I like the good players you mentioned there. Those guys. I like those good players.
So Elijah Moore.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty easy outside of the games we talked about that have a lot of receivers that we want to play, the Devontae Smiths, the Saints guys, CeeDee Lamb, Zay Flowers, maybe even a little bit of Dortch if we get there. Amon-Ra. I still think it's another week where it's Godwin over Evans again. Patrick Surtain's been really good these opening two games. The other guy I think that ties into Patrick Surtain that should have had a good game but didn't is George Pickens. One of these games, George Pickens is gonna have like 200 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
and while he's priced down at that range, like he's gonna win someone something big at some point. I don't know what week it'll be, but like I kind of want to keep playing him to find out. I mean, he's looked incredible.
Showdown slate.
He's looked awesome. That throw Justin Fields had on that 60-yarder that called back was just like that was such an insane play. Like they should have picked that flag up because it was just such a ridiculous play. He had a touchdown called back too. So, I mean, Pickens at his price still stands out to me. It's just that game's going to be so gross. Like Harbaugh has to, like he's probably been 6 to midnight all week. Like him and Tomlin in a 30.
Can't wait to run the ball every single time.
Like, oh my God, dude. Like this game's going to it's going to be amazing. Like there might not be a touchdown scored in that game.
And they'll love it.
You see the total?
Go to bed happy at night.
What is it, 38?
I have 35.5.
Yeah, neither team has an implied total in the 20s. They're both in the teens.
Is the line changed? I wrote them down earlier today, prepping for the show, because I kind of line them up in order. But I have 35.5. I'm not sure if that's changed. Let's see. I'll pull up score. Yeah, 35.5 is the current line. And I don't feel good betting the over.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that game.
The only other guy to mention that is FanDuel only because he's not on DraftKings is Rashee Rice, who's underpriced there. He's absolutely underpriced there. Do not ignore him if you're playing in cash games for sure there. He's been targeted so far this season on 32% of his routes against man coverage, 30% against zone coverage. No other wide receiver that's played both weeks has a 30-30 target rate against man and zone. The Falcons have completely switched to zone-based, team. They've only played man coverage on 16% of snaps. Rice is averaging 4.1 yards per out run against cover 3, which is what the Falcons are running the most. The Chiefs do not see a lot of cover 3. They do not see a lot of single high, but even if they see a lot of zone, going back to last year, only 2 wide receivers have averaged more yards per route run against any type of zone coverage than Rashee Rice. They are Tyreek Hill and Nico Collins. I mean, he's just too cheap. He's been awesome to start the year. He's too cheap over there. Unfortunately, you don't get to play him on DraftKings because of the Sunday night game.
I ran some optimals over there, and he's the most popular receiver. It's pretty obvious you got to play him at this price. Also, Drake London has a really good price in the other side of that game at 6.4. It's a pretty good price there for FanDuel if you want to run those guys against each other. And assuming people aren't like super impatient, Rice should be in your cash game lineup on FanDuel. And of course, if you're running tournament stuff as well. All right. Who wants to kick off tight ends? Feel free to go ahead and grab it before somebody else takes your tight end. Or not. I guess I'll just assign it to somebody. Does anybody like a tight end?
I mean, is this the section where we just talk about Brock Bowers every single week?
I guess so.
I mean, it's another week where you can quite easily go back to him, not only condensing that target tree between himself and Devontae Adams. And again, this only comes down to how you believe the game script's going to go. If the Raiders are going to pass or just lean on Zamir White instead. But we at least saw in week 1 that both Saints got there against the Panthers. For Foster Moreau had a touchdown. Juwan Johnson also got in with a touchdown. Brock Bowers still, again, like we mentioned earlier, box score would have been even better if he had fallen in for that touchdown. So still like Bowers. Beyond that, though, I think we talked about the guys I'm mostly going to play. we don't have many cheap options so far popping last week, just because we had so many injuries at that position. If Jake Ferguson comes back, he's still pretty cheap. I would play him. So that's about it for me, Rich. I think we talked about George Kittle too.
Yep. I think I'm probably just going to have Kittle or Bowers in just about every lineup. And then a little bit of Mark Andrews.
You guys said no to Rams receivers. Parkinson? Is Parkinson in play?
No, I mean, that's
the sense of the offense is too bad.
We talked about last week, though, with Parkinson. We were worried that the offensive line was going to hinder him, and his route rate didn't like significantly fall off, but it did dip because they needed him a little bit. So that was the worry, right? So and I also have a rule that we can never break. I don't play dudes against Fred Warner. I don't play tight ends that play against Fred Warner.
Fair enough.
I bet at his salary too, since again, we're losing all the 2,900 guys like last week due to their starters coming back, or someone like Jordan Akins who didn't even get the full helping of routes. I bet Colby Parkinson's the cash game tied in this week too, which is always worrisome.
The stuff I ran, it has Kittle at 28%, Munt at 20, Shoemaker at 18. We're assuming that Ferguson's out.
Yeah.
Bowers 17%. McBride 7.
Schoonmaker didn't even get the usage we thought. He only ran 15 routes. He just got targeted on 6 of those 15 routes because they send him out to the flats. It's like called plays for him to throw the ball over a rushing edge defender. So he just gets the called plays, the design targets.
Yeah, I know salary cap's a thing, but ideally if I'm playing cash, I want to get Kittle. That's probably the guy I want. Or I'm fine with McBride as well, but Kittle feels pretty fabulous this week.
Pretty safe.
All right. Rich, anything else as far as the week as a whole? We're going to talk our movies in a second. We watched Hitman. We'll discuss that. I do want to get let the people, give them the socials now in case they're not sticking around for the movies. Let them know where to find the goods, any sort of promos you have. Rich, if you want to be found on the Twitter, let them know where to find you. Give us all you got.
I probably have some promos, but I didn't check in with home base because I've been just kind of in the worksheet shell. So I just haven't found that groove yet to where I have more time between this show and when I finish. So there probably is a promo. I don't know what it is. Maybe you reach out on Twitter if you're looking for it, but you can go check out the worksheet. All the primetime games are free. Even if you don't have a sub, you can always check out the primetime games if you're excited for Jets Patriots tomorrow, our first true Thursday night special of the season. Go on and read about Hunter Henry and whoever else you may want to play in that game. And then we have the 2 double Monday nights, so you can check those out for free as well.
Oh, I take advantage of it this week. You get 2 for free if you're not a sub.
Yeah.
John, I know you're doing a lot of the season long work over at ETR. I caught some of your stuff, and you're having the answer start sit and pick up questions with Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele and B. Ryan. I'm sure you're loving the Kansas City conversation.
Really, the hard
Thank
part
God
about
they aren't on this slate, dude.
The hard part about that, Dean, is that the conversations are different, but people still blend in together. When I do a waivers pod with Carson Steele, that's completely different than when I do a rest of season top 150 with Carson Steele. Because Carson Steele may lead the waivers, but he probably doesn't lead anything else in life. So it's just a different podcast entirely to have, and it's all blending together. Like Rich, also, I'm finding my footing. Definitely the schedule is a little bit lighter, or a little bit easier, I should say, getting back into the motion this week, but it's definitely taking a toll still. The bags are under my eyes. So everything had established the run. This year, I'm also writing the primetime matchups in place of Evan Silva to take a little bit off his plate. So this week, it'll be 3 games for you all over there. And I do the showdown content on Monday as well, since I write the matchup.
Did you know Carson Steele has a pet alligator? Everybody knows this now, right? Every single time they mention his name, it's they're just obligated to mention, hey, he's got a pet alligator. Here's a picture. His name is Crocky J, if you were curious.
Great name.
It's spectacular.
He has a great nickname too. Do you know what is it? It's amazing.
Carson Steele's got a nickname already? Is he nickname worthy?
He had a nickname in college. It was amazing.
I'm giving it a quick Google and see if we got something. Thor Fabio. Man of Steel?
Warhorse. Warhorse is what it is.
That is a great name.
Warhorse is better than all the first 3 that popped up. TJ saying it's Crocodile Dundee.
Producer Warhorse is what he was called in college. Great nickname.
That's pretty. Where did he go to college? I don't know where he went to college.
Oh, I know where he went. Was it UCLA? Someone could correct me on that.
I don't know. Again, we have a machine where you can just type this in.
I know. Was it UCLA though?
Wait, it was UCLA. Yes, it was UCLA.
Yes,
UCLA, right?
UCLA.
Yeah.
There you go. It was a Bruin.
Fun fact though about them, because when I was doing the pre-season rookie stuff, the Chiefs actually brought him in for a visit. Like they used one of their 30 visits on Carson Steele.
I mean, he beat out Deneric Prince, who had special teams chops.
He was never projected to be drafted, but the Chiefs brought him in, and I remember writing about it like pre-draft. Like, are they trying to bring back like an Anthony Sherman type role to this offense? But they actually used one of their 30 visits on Carson Steele.
Amazing.
All right,
he was always on their radar.
Yeah, apparently, and he seems like, I know preseason he was spectacular, and the people seem to like him. Some glowing reviews. We'll see how it works out on Sunday night. By the way, check out my content, RotoGrinders, RotoGrinders.com. Sunday morning, I'll be talking the slate starting 9:30 in the morning with Tasteful Tides, Tim Buell. We have Bobby Gomes as well. We take you guys all the way up the lock with a slew of really, really sharp people, content on the site as well. But also want to bring somebody else that's multitasking and pretty sharp. That's producer TJ. As we're talking movies, last week our movie winner was here's producer Rob. I thought producer Rob was lurking as well. Good.
You can just call me Rob now. I have retired my producer bags.
Jericho's Rob.
Yeah,
Rob is fine.
Producer's like the seventh thing you did. Like you have you have a lot of different things you have your hands in, I suppose. But Rob, it's just stuck in my head. That's producer Rob. But my apologies. It's fine. It's just Rob talking ghost stories and things of that sort as well. But TJ, welcome. Did you have any takes, by the way, as far as this slate? I know you've heard the conversation. Anything you wanted to add?
No, not in particular. I might play one lineup this slate, but I'm going to be out of town doing press for the Agents of Fandom at the convention. So I will. Okay. I may not play this weekend, and have it off of content and such.
All right, John, you picked our movie this week. You picked Hitman. Hitman played on Netflix.
Can I jump in real quick before we start talking about Hitman?
Of course.
I want to propose something for next year. I think,
buddy, I don't know if anyone's here next year. Like, trying to do the Shanahan.
I understand
3 right now, Rob.
This is my point. It's week 3, and this is the first movie review. So if we are here next year, right?
And why can't we do this beginning next week?
What?
Why can't we do whatever you're about to say beginning next week?
I'm just going to propose. It's going to take 2 seconds.
Okay.
It is for next year. Whoever gets the most wins this year gets to pick the movies for the first 2 weeks next year, so that there's a movie on the first 2 weeks next year.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Yeah. If the show still exists, if you want to add that qualifier.
Rich and I literally spend our entire offseason just waiting to get an email either from Dan or Devin. And when the day comes, we always text each other because it's the best day ever. But we never know if it's going to come. You just never know.
I didn't realize they keep you guys in such suspense. I have no idea. But hopefully those emails keep on coming.
You would have thought that we watched Beetlejuice with John Daigle having his name on the screen 3 times.
I watched the original Beetlejuice for the very first time, start to finish, like a month ago.
The first time?
You always.
I've seen parts of it.
I
could pick him out of a lineup, like I know who he is, but barely in the movie. By the way, false advertising. He's like barely in it. It's like the 7th person, not the 7th, but you know what I mean. He's barely.
That's
in the
kind of
movie.
how
Like
I
11
felt when
minutes.
I was watching. That's kind of how I felt about when I was watching Furiosa. When Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa doesn't actually show up until an hour into the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Didn't know that.
It's sort of like our movie that we watched for this week. It's going to be the 7th movie we talk about by the time we get to
it. We have a clear plan of attack here always. It's not having a plan of attack.
I told these guys I have a hard out tonight, but they rifled through the normal show so fast that we're chilling right now. We got all the time in the world.
Yeah, we're definitely pacing ourselves. It's like the 4th quarter. We're up by 3 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers, we're snapping it at 1 every single time. We're killing that clock.
We're the Saints. We're the Saints right now.
There you go. TJ's team. John, do you want to tell? Why did we go with Hitman? It was just kind of the chalk, I suppose. I think you threw that one out there, and that was the most popular amongst.
It's always toughest at the beginning of the year, just because I don't know how y'all spent your off seasons and what you watched, and so I just Googled the best streaming movies right now, and Hitman was in the top 10. And so I presented 3 options, and we ended up on Hitman, and here we are.
Hitman is it's on Netflix. If you guys are not aware, it's interesting. Like, you know how they give a description, and it's a really hard movie to describe. Rotten Tomatoes calls it a romance, comedy, action, crime, mystery, and thriller. It's got every box checked. Sure. Like, it kind of is all those. Like, you can't really put this movie in a very particular box, but
and doesn't do any of them well. But we'll talk about that shortly.
Oh wow, well, Rob coming in hot. Oh boy, that's I'm curious how the rest of you guys felt. Who wants to open it up? Who wants to give their? Well, I guess Rob, do you want to open it up? Because that's
because I hated it, so we might as well say some good words about it. I'm sure at least one of you liked this movie. I
bet TJ likes it. TJ likes everything.
TJ doesn't hate movies. He's incapable.
That's true. There are very few movies that I dislike, and a lot of the ones I dislike are like Oscar movies, like Power of the Dog. I can't stand that movie. I think it's absolutely horrific.
It was a good movie, but I don't want to watch it again. Can I say that? Is that fine?
That's fair.
It looked beautiful. It was shot well.
Say good things. Say good things about this movie, TJ.
I actually do really like it. I think it kind of is one of the many movies recently that solidifies why Glenn Powell is one of the biggest up-and-coming movie stars out there. He's hilarious. He just blends into every one of these roles. The premise is pretty ridiculous, but I think it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a turn your brain off and just have a lot of fun type of movie. I do have, like, my biggest complaint from it is probably with Arya Arjona's character. I think I pronounced her name right. I absolutely love her as Bix in the Star Wars series Andor. She's incredible. She is, from an acting perspective, wonderful in this movie. But from a writing perspective, the character doesn't really have anything going on other than, like, they're crazy and hot. There's no other depth to that character. And so I thought she did a wonderful job playing it. I thought the writing was kind of lacking there in the romance perspective, but I think the movie's a lot of fun. Jump in here, Rich. What do you got?
I wasn't mad I watched this. Like, it was something that I watched. I'll never watch this movie again. There's nothing to it. It's the Sterling Bell. It was a 40-degree day. Like, it just came. Nothing happened. Like Rob said, I don't think it couldn't pick a genre like you led into and didn't do any of it well. I also think, so I was reading about this real story because I was curious about the real story, about the real Gary Johnson. And, like, the real story would have been probably a lot cooler. It reminded me of the movie you made us watch last year, Dean, that was like the half documentary. Where like the actual, someone read a story and it was a pretty interesting story, but it wasn't like a fully fledged out, like, 3-act story, and it just, like, made up some stuff to make it a 3-act story. And that's what happens with this, especially in the 3rd act. They try to make something that's, like, kind of compelling, a movie, and it just, like, the stuff that they made up, it just makes no sense with the tone of the movie up to that point. When you get, like, kind of the big reveal at the end, that everyone's just cool with murdering people now, and that you have happy ever after story. But the real story about this Gary Johnson dude is pretty cool because of him going, like, undercover and, like, taking on all these disguises and stuff. He actually, like, developed like a disdain for, like, human beings. Like, he was, like, divorced like 3 times. He, like, had no faith in humanity. Like, just didn't believe in people anymore. And, like, and obviously that's not as fun of a movie as watching Glenn Powell dress up as a bunch of dudes, but, like, that's probably a more realistic and compelling story to the person that would have had that job in real life. And the Glenn Powell casting this, although he's fun, dude, he's there. It's like the She's All That thing. Like, this is a super hot.
Bad casting.
They tuck his shirt into his jeans, and we're supposed to think this dude's like Glenn Powell's like a loser, and, like, no one thinks he's like a handsome, charming dude.
It's
like,
Clark Kent.
You'll be able, Robin and Rich, you'll probably be able to appreciate this one. And I think John, Dean's probably the only one who maybe hasn't seen the movie, I think, but Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man movie. That's my biggest issue with it. As great, as amazing of a Spider-Man as he is, they start with, like, this dude's skateboarding through high school. Andrew Garfield, like, looking all cool, skateboarding through his hallway, and everyone's like, "Oh, look at this loser," making fun of him and stuff like that. There's absolutely no chance in hell that if Andrew Garfield is skateboarding through the halls of your high school that you're gonna think it's the biggest nerd in school.
Yeah, the skateboard would have wrecked because the floor would have been sopping wet. You know,
I also couldn't get past the fact that, one, Walton Goggins probably tried out for this role initially. So I kept on thinking that. And 2, having, being found family and having done so many shows with Rich over the many years we've done this together, like at the end of the movie, I just know Rich's appeal with films. And when normal people do not normal things, nothing pisses Rich off more in movies. And so I just knew whenever she committed that murder, spoiler alert, I was like, oh, Rich is out. He's already checked out if he wasn't already. So I thought it was charming, but I don't think shallow may not be the negative term, but the writing is shallow. It's very just on the surface.
Surface level, yeah.
There's nothing in depth. You don't have to think about it at all. So there's certainly, a moment for all of that. But because of that, like Rich, I'll never watch it again, and I don't understand the high ratings.
I assume Rich hates Ozark, by the way. Have you seen Ozark? Just based on
I do hate Ozark. Thank you. Absolutely deplorable. That show is absolutely goddamn ridiculous.
You scream at your teeth. I cannot believe. Why would he do this? This doesn't make any sense. I can see you screaming at Ozark.
Yeah.
The
acting in Ozark is incredible though. But there's a lot of times where I did watch. I stayed through it too. I watched the whole thing, but
you watched it till the end.
I haven't finished it yet myself. Unfortunately,
you want to spoil that too, John, or no?
No, don't spoil it. We can spoil this movie. It's implied. We told the people what movie we were going to watch.
Yeah, everybody
gave them a week to watch it.
Everyone else is also supposed to have watched it if they're still here.
This is why we need Rob here every week, because he's the one that usually set those rules last year. Also, I'm not going to spoil Ozark, but I only went back and finished it because remember they went away and came back like after the pandemic after a long time, and I invested so much time into it already. I'll be damned if I'd let that last season go by. It's not worth watching. Don't worry about it.
I was supposed to say that Glenn Powell co-wrote this, co-screenwriter with Richard Linklater, so that's why he's starring in it. Like he's not starring in it if he's not writing it. I assume it's a package deal.
He shouldn't have. This was not a movie for him. Glenn Powell is also a heel, by the way. Like Glenn Powell needs
in
to
this
be
movie
playing...
or in general.
No, in general, he should be a heel in more movies right now. He can have his hero redemption arc, but right now,
like Twisters, he is the Shawn Michaels character. Basically, he's like the lovable heel. Yeah, he basically is Shawn Michaels.
He needs to play more heel roles. He was a heel in Top Gun. He was great at it. He is a perfect heel right now. He is not this lovable, whatever the hell they were doing. Clearly, did not fit him at all, and to the whole average person doing extraordinary things. So this guy is all of a sudden, he's a college professor, but he's amazing with electronics. Oh, and now he's the best actor on the planet just out of nowhere. Just out of nowhere. This guy can just put on any disguise and he can just walk in and boom, be in character 24/7 whenever he wants. That's what we're doing in this movie. It's like an Adam Sandler movie that becomes like crime movie, and then the characters aren't likable because you're just killing somebody. What the fuck was this movie? Is what I want to know.
American Psycho was great.
Yeah, he put so many people in jail for pre-crime, like he's coming out of Minority Report, and then he just murders a dude.
This was terrible. It's for love. You're just putting a plastic bag over somebody's face for love.
For love, bro.
And I'm
she
supposed to like
she was
this
delightful.
character?
We're gonna be honest. She seemed delightful. So like,
I think at that point he was scared. Like he was just scared.
He was pot committed. 80 miles per hour.
This movie had no idea what it wanted to be. This was like it played like so many different movies. It really played like a dress-up Chris Kattan movie. Like at some point, like just playing all these different, like Master of Disguise / Glenn Powell.
Dana Carvey.
I love Master of Disguise.
Yeah, well, I was thinking,
TJ likes every movie. He likes Master of Disguise.
That movie came out when I was like 4 years old. Of course,
watch it with like 30-year-old eyes. You're gonna hate it.
It's terribly fun.
It's Corky Romano ass movie. Like I just could not get into this movie. I was watching. I'm like, what is even the plot of this movie? Like, what are we doing here? Like
they said they read it. They read an actual article, like a newspaper article about this guy. I think it was written in a magazine where they read it, and they were like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. And they tried to like craft a script, but they're like, these elements like I'm interested in those. Oh, how do we make this a movie? And they just like added all this stuff to it.
Yeah, they just try to cross too many genres with this movie, and it just feels like pushed together. It's not a romantic comedy. It's like so weird. Elements, like there's like it shifts tones every 15 minutes. of what they're trying to be, and then it'll go back and be like this zany comedy where he's dressed up in this fucking stupid wig.
You're like, cut back to him being a professor, and like the girls are like, "Oh, this guy's hot." They was clearly hot the entire time. He just untucked the shirt.
Yeah,
like,
he took that wig off. Now he's super hot.
I love that she's all that Rachel Lee Cook comparison.
Do you, Rob? Do you think this is the worst movie we've all watched together since doing this journey?
I don't.
No, you guys did Money Plane. I had to turn Money Plane off. I turned Money Plane off. I rarely ever like just turn a movie off.
You paid like $5 for it.
Yeah, it was like $4, dude. Like,
it's the most overhyped movie we watched by far. Like that, people think that this is a good movie just because like the production's good, the cinematography is great, there is good acting in it, but the movie, you still need a story, and there's just no story here for this particular movie.
It's a story. There's a story.
Come on, Dean. There's no story here.
There's very clearly a story. There's 3 distinct acts. I mean, if you don't like the story, that's fine. But there's very clearly a story. TJ, I guess it's just me and you. We're defending this movie.
It's not good.
It's not good.
TJ's all right.
Leaving me hanging.
So we've all had our different scoring systems. So I will give I do out of 5. I will give this a 1.4 out of 5.
Oof, 1.4. Rich, you do tight ends, right? I don't know if you've thought about this. I don't remember your scoring.
Yeah,
system.
I think I'm gonna keep that bit going.
I love that bit. Are you prepared for this? Were you ready for the tight ends? Or you need to come up with one on the fly? We can come back to you.
No, I think this is this movie I think is Cole Kmet. Like, people keep telling us Cole Kmet's a thing, but he's not a thing. He's not a thing.
Why is it Kyle Pitts? Well, why is it Cole Kmet?
No.
Kyle Pitts scores a touchdown every once in a while. Come on.
Well, he was open by 30 feet.
This movie never got in the end zone.
I might have used Kyle Pitts last year. I don't know. I have to go back. I have to go back and see now that I've developed a scoring system who I have already used.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's watchable.
Yeah, this movie is a 40-degree day. It's a 40-degree day.
All right, fair enough.
I'm not as down as Rob. Like I don't think it's like one of them, but it's just not good.
It's just not good.
Well, did you guys?
I wasn't mad that I watched it.
I was
like Money Plane. I wanted to kill myself. Like,
and you watched 10 minutes of it. It doesn't get better, by the way. Just so you know, it did not get better. It got significantly worse.
I was like reevaluating my life and my relationship with Dean because of Money Plane.
I thought it was going to be unintentionally funny, and it was just intentionally terrible. I think.
Yeah,
that's not what I was expecting. But did you guys look at you guys both? Several of you guys talked about how highly this is rated. We usually play the Rotten Tomatoes game. Do you guys know the scores of Rotten Tomatoes?
I don't know the scores. I know they're too high though.
I don't want to lead the witness here, but
what did Daigle and TJ get? TJ has to develop his scoring system.
Yeah.
What is your stat? It's got to be something like
mine was, I believe mine was decimal all the way to 10.
Yep.
And I think Sideways set the bar at 8.1. Life always goes back to Sideways. Thank you for opening my eyes, Dean. And this is a 5.1. It's there.
All right. TJ, how many poutines out of 10 poutines is it? I don't know what your angle is going to be. What do you got?
Wow.
I don't know. I'll develop an angle for next week. I hadn't thought it through. I was also just planning on going.
Got to be superheroes.
Yeah. I was thinking.
What superhero would this movie be?
That's what I was kind of thinking. Is maybe it would be fun to do that, but
Booster
Dean,
Gold.
You go first before me.
Yeah, think about it, Dean. Think about it, TJ, while Dean reads off.
Mine's
one out of Booster Gold. It's Skeets, like the little thing that flew around in Booster Gold.
1 out of 100. I'm gonna say this was like an 81. I had fun. I had fun with this movie. I don't understand why, and I'm very critical of movies, and I'm typically somebody. This is the one where you just gotta turn your brain off, as somebody said. Turn your brain off, just kick back and enjoy. There are elements of comedy. There is a story in it. The ending is a little, I don't know if that's what it really went down. Probably not. That's where Rich probably got angry.
Yeah, they said it wasn't where it went down. They were like, we made that up.
Not literally. Yeah. Well, I mean, Rudy was offsides too. Do we want to talk about how Rudy was made up? Like that old Joe Montana will tell you the thing with the jerseys didn't happen. They didn't even know Rudy existed, half those guys probably. But that's just, based on a true story. That's how that works. By the way, it was a lot of fun. It was. I really enjoyed it.
I respect. You're allowed to.
Oh, you're allowed
I enjoyed
to.
it. I'm surprised that I'm like the most positive person on this show when it comes, because again, I can be very critical at times. And we'll see that going forward, I would imagine.
Buddy, I just ripped Alien Romulus apart last night. I will rip any movie apart if I have to.
You wanted to like Alien Romulus, I assume. That's right in your alley, isn't it?
Yeah, of course I want to like Alien Romulus, but there were things that I didn't enjoy about it.
All right, fair enough.
I'll have a more thought out answer next week, but I'm going to call Hitman a J. Jonah Jameson because I agree with you, Dean. There's a story. For those who don't know, J. Jonah Jameson is, even though he's not a super powered villain, kind of like a foil to Spider-Man, always writing terrible things about him in the media. And there's always a story there, but it's not often a well thought out story. It doesn't always make a lot of sense. But the viewers are going to be there because there's a lot of flash. And more often than not, it is a lot of fun. And so it's comic book characters, not superheroes I'm going with. And I'm going J. Jonah Jameson. And for my ranking out of 10, it'd be a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. J.K. Simmons. Shout out to J.K. Simmons. And it sells papers. It gets clicks. And that's what is most important. I feel like we threw this out before and somebody else kind of talked about it. Is there an actor under the age of 40? If we're having a draft, right? Well, this is kind of the way we talk in these kind of terms. Glenn Powell's the 1-1, right? We're drafting an actor. We get their resume, we get them going forward.
No.
Actor. Oh, well, okay. Who do you got?
Are you talking actor or movie star? Actor. Still no, but.
Well, what's the difference?
Big difference. There are a lot of people who are incredible actors who are not movie stars, who are not. They're not somebody that people go to a movie star
at box office. Every movie star now is like 60 years old.
Vin Diesel, Dean. Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel's not box office anymore. He's like 70, and they're done with the Fast.
His whole career.
For males under 40 right now, the 1-1 would be Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, Chalamet is one.
Maybe. Okay. I mean, again, I'll give me the next like 10 years. I want the next 10 years. As far as in quality,
the 1-1 for sure.
But by the way, he's doing The Running Man. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Director Edgar Wright and Stephen King and Edgar Wright are writing it. Glenn Powell's. I assume this is a remake of The Running Man. It's not an original Running Man. I don't know, but I was checking to see on IMDb his future projects, and like Timothy Chalamet, he ain't getting that call. And they're not calling Timothy first. He ain't the Running Man, but
yeah, because he's too booked up already. But also 1-2 under 40, I would go MBJ. Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah. It took me a second. I'm like,
I was trying to think if he was under 40.
He's
37. I don't know if he is. It's got to be close.
Yeah.
He's 37.
He's
I just
around.
looked it up. Gosling is 43, so he wouldn't be in the mix. But
Doesn't
Michael
count.
B. Jordan 37.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. That's I'm not going to besmirch. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody else. Let us know.
TJ, you like every movie. Did you like Michael B. Jordan's Fantastic Four?
Speaking of movies that literally have no story, one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
All right, cool.
Maybe the worst movie I've ever seen.
We
really
found one. We found one.
I can find you some more movies. I can find you some terrible
Aliens,
movies.
Romulus.
Of the movies that were trying to be good when they were being made, that might be the worst movie I've ever seen.
The Room was trying to be good. What are you trying to say here?
Weekend at Bernie's 2. And I think that's up there for me. But
God, I don't even remember the second one. I don't even remember the second one. I know I've watched it, but I don't remember anything about it.
He goes
Caddyshack
underwater.
2 is bad too, by the way.
And he listens to like reggae music underwater, and that's what gets him going.
Oh yeah.
It's really bad.
Now I remember.
Highly disrecommend.
Doesn't sound promising.
I had to head to music. Yeah, it's not good. First one's a lot of fun though. You can have a lot of fun. That's also an 81 on the 100-point scale for sure. But anything else we should say? By the way, another Glenn Powell movie. This is probably where they got the idea. Did you guys ever watch the other movie they did together, Linklater and Powell? It's a college movie based around like a baseball team. Everybody wants some. Has anybody seen that? I saw it a couple months ago. It's pretty good. Anybody? No?
Is he the hero in that movie or is he the villain?
He's like one of 7 guys. So it's like a college. Linklater is also the guy that did Dazed and Confused. If you like Dazed and Confused, it's kind of a modern day Dazed and Confused, kind of sort of somewhat. If that does something for you.
Gotcha.
Just that was their collaboration previously. Different kind of movie, But we have to establish, Rich, you got to let us know what we're watching next week. Do you have a selection, an ABC, or just this is it and that's that?
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna put one on here because now I only have to watch one movie a week because of the schedule. So I'm just gonna pick something that's like on the list that I always wanted to get to but never did, and it's gonna be Sisu. I don't know if you guys have seen this, if anyone's seen it, but you can watch it on Hulu. SISU for Dean to Google it, but it's made by the director of John Wick. So I always wanted to get to it.
It took me a second. Now I know what it is.
I always wanted to see this, and I never got to. So we're all gonna watch it together.
Awesome. Okay.
Dean is gonna hate this movie, but we're gonna see what happens.
Good. Since he bullied Daigle into making us watch Hitman last week.
There was no bullying.
We could have watched Godzilla.
Yeah, we almost got Godzilla -1. We missed out on that.
And then somebody was doing the Rotten Tomatoes blowing the score so that.
Oh wait, we have to guess.
We should do that. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, let's do
and then get out of here.
First.
This is why we need Rob. We need regulation.
You need me here for this. Jesus Christ.
As mediator. It's mediator Rob, then not producer Rob.
Yeah.
All right. So Rich, you're gonna go first. Let's do the critics. 298 reviews. 298 reviews. It's a big sample size. The critics' reviews of Hitman.
74% Rotten Tomatoes, 6.5 on the IMDb.
Oh, let me pull up the IMDb as well. Hold on a second. Remember your scores. I'm not writing these all down. But
what did you go with, 74? Right. Is that what you went, Rich? 74?
What? 74%. RT.
Rob's doing game theory. He's gonna one up you. Or...
Well, he was close to what I was gonna pick, so I'm wondering if I should change it.
John,
I believe he got high. I glanced at it, forgetting that we do this a couple weeks ago. So I'm gonna say 91% Rotten Tomatoes. That's probably why it popped on the top movies to watch list.
That makes sense by Rotten Tomatoes because again, Rotten Tomatoes is literally thumbs up, thumbs down, and this movie is like the definition of a 5 or 6.
It's a thumb up. Yeah,
and because of that, critics, I'll go. I feel like I would have. Would critics give it a good review? I don't think so. I'll still go 79%.
Rob,
76%. Audience is going to be 88%. IMDb is going to be 8.4.
8.4 is a strong number.
And I think like Shawshank over there is like an 8.9 or something. Like,
the audience is sometimes an idiot, so that's why.
Oh yeah, sorry. Audience is supposed to be decimal. Audience.
No, they're both percent on Rotten Tomatoes, but then IMDb is decimal.
IMDb. Yeah. Oh, then let me correct IMDb and go. God, critic. And you said 5, Rob. I'll go 5.4.
Is IMDb historically really strong, like really hard?
On an 8.2 is really, really strong. I would just say the number Rob was throwing out there.
They also saw Sideways.
Well, here, you know what? I'll tell you this. What Sideways is on IMDb, if this will help.
Oh, it's going to break my heart.
It is a 7.5 on IMDb, which is egregious.
Thomas Hayden Church wins over everyone.
Yeah, which is, again, their scale is 8's really, really good, is the point. TJ?
Wow, Dark Knight is a 9 on IMDb.
Woo!
So essentially that's telling me that's about as high as I can go. I will go. What did Daigle pick for Rotten Tomatoes?
91.
I will go 92 on the critics rating.
Price is right.
90% audience. And for IMDb, I will go 7.
All right. Turning the cards over. Yeah, 298 reviews on Hitman, according to critics. 95%, 19 out of 20 liked Hitman. They gave the thumb up, as they just gave it 3 out of 5 stars. That's a thumb up. Interesting. It says fewer than 50 verified ratings for the audience. So it's not a huge audience score, which is kind of surprising. I figured there'd be more. It's been out there for a while. It's been in the top 10 on Netflix. 91% audience. 91% audience. On
Audiences only go to Rotten Tomatoes when they want to crap on something.
Yeah.
They should have shit on this thing.
Hitman on a 10-point scale on IMDb is a 6.8. It's a 6.8. So I don't know who took that down, but a couple of guys danced around that, I think. But a 6.8. Now we know how the game is played. We'll get back to it next week as well. And the name of the movie, again, I know I have it pulled up here someplace. What's the name of the movie we're watching?
Sisu.
You guys played it off like you all are aware of this. Am I the only person that's never heard of this? Everyone's like, yeah, like, of course, Sisu. Why not? Yeah.
Once he said who it was from, I knew what it was.
I just Googled it because I had never heard of it before. And
it looks awesome.
I think it's on Hulu, if you have a Hulu.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to week number 3. With that, you guys already Rob, tell them you didn't get any sort of promo, and TJ as well. Tell the people where they can find you. Go ahead, Rob.
Sure. So it is spooky season. You can find me over at Hometown Ghost Stories. If you're looking for something to do with the significant other, we tell ghost stories. If you're in the Massachusetts area, on October 18th, exactly 1 month from today, we have our first ticketed live show where it's going to be us, another podcast we are headlining. It is at a brewery. So if you're in the area and you want to have some drinks, listen to some ghost stories, bring the significant other out, you can do that on October 18th, October 25th. That weekend, we are hosting an entire weekend on Block Island, doing paranormal investigations, ghost tours, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on an island. You have to take a ferry over there. You can find all that information at hometownghoststories.com. And I do best ball content at Spike Week, which is kind of done, but kind of not done, because best ball's never really done. But that's everything I have for now.
You've been checking your scores, Rob?
Hells yeah. Dude, there's a tournament that the playoffs start today. There's a September only tournament.
Oh yeah. The one
I have one team move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I got 2 in that one. So both Lamar teams.
Well, there you go. You're live. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Rich, on that DraftKings September only tournament, people were drafting Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah. September only. Jonathan Brooks, 11th rounder.
That's how soft it was.
Contrarian.
Best tournament in best ball.
There is a week 3 starting up I saw in the lobby on DK. I don't know if you guys saw it or care. You're just kind of done with best ball stuff, but I did see a week 3 is out there. I'm not sure if it's sold out or not. Obviously not the same sort of prize pool, but if you want to jump in as far as best ball stuff, there is places to go. TJ, tell the people where they can find you.
Obviously doing stuff here all the time at RotoGrinders, and then also I am doing TV, movie content over at Agents of Fandom, so just absolutely stupidly busy there right now. I have a live show starting 30 minutes from now, and it'll be 10 p.m. Eastern every week going forward, doing live after shows for the new Disney Plus Marvel show, Agatha All Along. We are doing breakdowns of The Penguin, the new HBO show, every single week.
Wait.
We have a comic book podcast every single week, and then also Rings of Power on Amazon. I'm writing for all those shows except for not Rings of Power, and I am writing for Only Murders in the Building, so you can find all those reviews up at agentsfandom.com, and a lot of really fun interviews coming. Just today, I did one with Lenore Zan. She is the voice of Rogue in X-Men the Animated Series and X-Men 97. And then on Friday, I will be interviewing oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name off the top. I forgot his last name. Renzi Feliz. He's going to be in the Penguin show, and he also was Camilo in Encanto for our Encanto fans out there. And then for New York, I'm going to New York Comic Con next month and got a lot lined up already, even though it's still a month away. I'm going to be talking to composer Bear McCreary, as well as the creators and cast of Rick and Morty and a couple other animated shows. So lots of fun stuff coming up there as well, all coming to agentsfandom.com.
Sounds like a blast. Penguin. I think we're all excited for Penguin. I'm sure Rob will find a way to pick it apart and hate watch it. But looking for the trailer does look spectacular. All right, let's get out of here. For Rich, for John, for TJ, for Rob, for Taylor Swift, we're going to hear the rest of that promo in just a second.
Thank you for the reminder, because I definitely forgot.
We all forgot.
You're welcome. Do I need to buy some time now, or we're good?
No, you're good. I'm ready.
All right, I'm Dean. This was RotoGrinders. Go win something in week 3. We're out of here. Holler.
Don't let the Chads, Brads, and Dads have all the fun this football season with their parlays and their fantasy team. You can have fun too by playing Tix Pick 6, and you'll have a chance to win a trip for 2 to the Eras Tour in Vancouver. And the best part, it's totally free. So here's the deal. Each week, you'll make 6 picks. 2 of them will be about Taylor, like who's going to be in the suite with her that game. The other 4 will be about the Chiefs game, and it's designed to teach you the basics of sports betting. So who will cover the spread? Or will Travis score a touchdown? You earn points for every right answer, and those points turn into entries into the grand prize drawing. You can win up to 13 points a week. Don't know anything about sports betting? Don't worry. I've got you. Each week I break it all down in a preview article so you can make more informed choices. You must be 21 plus and in the US to enter. For more, check out TixPick6.actionnetwork.com.